Welcome to the Wing Life Podcast, where we talk about wing foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy this great sport.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for joining me, man.
Happy to be here. Yeah, Luke, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, stoked to hear about your trip that you just had on the coast.
Yeah, it was epic. It was like the forecast you look for to head out there, and even it's a fickle stretch of coastline, and you're never quite sure what you're going to get. And it's always a fantastic adventure, and I'm always happy I went. But this time we absolutely scored for conditions, so that was a blast.
Awesome. And whereabouts do you live, and whereabouts did you go?
So basing here in Hood River, in the Gorge. This is my summer, fall residence, and then winter, spring I spend on Maui, or have for the last few years anyways, and plan to do so again this year. So the coast mission for me is usually, you from Hood River, it's an hour to Portland, and then another hour plus to the nearest spot on the coast. But for windsurf or wind sports or wing or anything like this, I've found you start at Central Coast, which would be Newport, which is not necessarily always the best place, but it'll be sort of the dividing line between where the wind starts and stops. And then from there, you can kind of target where you want to go. Of course, if I can go further north, it's less driving, and the conditions up north are second to none, but it's sometimes it's worth it to head down south, and that's what the forecast was looking like. So I actually went down and started at Florence and posted up on the jetty there after it was like a 4.5 hour drive, and it's a pretty rustic spot, and you bump out on the jetty, and in my van there was a big sand drift over the jetty, and I didn't get to park out to my normal spot, so adds a little bit of the drama. And bundled up, and it was cold outside, beautiful weather, but cold outside. Ran up over the dune and looked out to sea, and it was absolutely massive. It was macking. It was, Hawaiian 8 to 10 to 15 feet, something like that. Totally pumping. The wind was light too, which I sort of suspected for that first look. We were at the very beginning of the wind in the forecast, and the wind was light, and I had an early departure, so I just kind of snuggled down in the dunes there and had a lunch and watched the waves, which were just spectacular, and took a little rest, and then headed south. Met up with a buddy down in Coos Bay, and then spent the night there, and then straight to Cape Sebastian after that the next morning, and it was on straight away.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So you were down there for how long?
About 3 days down there, and the conditions, it was just, after looking at Florence and seeing these waves breaking so far out to sea, 500 yards past the jetty, and it's not like the waves in Hawaii tend to be a little bit more organized by sets. The channels working, you can kind of get away with a lot there. You can sneak out, you can get in position, whereas the coast, it's just sand. It's just sandbars and beach breaks. So the waves were just pumping nonstop. So I was actually hoping to get south and get a little bit around the corner and get out of the brunt of the energy. And that's what we found down in the Cape. And at first morning, it was, it was still sizable. I was windsurfing that first day, and it was mast high for sure, over mast high, bigger on the outside sets. And windy, straight on to a 4.5. I should have been on a 4.0 or something like that. It was absolutely nuking.
Okay.
But that's good because it gives you a lot of mobility, right? You can get around, and you look at it and it's like, well, I'm here, and it doesn't exactly look fun, but you got to get out there, right? It's just raspy and rough and challenging, and so we just went for it, and we got to enjoy riding the peak of the swell, I would say, because that afternoon there was probably as the tide was reaching high, we probably had a 15-minute period where the waves were non-stop. It was just 10-foot corduroy coming in, chaos, just everywhere. You could get around this and that, but from there it just started to drop and drop and drop, and the wind started to moderate, and then it just got better and better and better for the next couple of days. So I was glad to start on the peak of the swell, because the rest of it felt a little more manageable, actually. Yeah,
Beautiful.
that was super good.
How long have you been sailing for now?
Phew. Well, I'm 52. I learned when I was 14 in Southwest Florida. That was sort of like the part of that first real heyday of windsurfing. And I grew up between Michigan and Florida. And in Florida, I lived on the Gulf Coast, Southwest Florida, Estero Island, and went all my high school years there. And that was, you could be a surfer in Southwest Florida, but that was more like you either had to drive or you had to like pose with your board because there was not a lot of waves going on, and the windsurfing kind of caught hold there and exploded in my area, actually. So this is around the Sanibel, Captiva, Naples, that area. We have the Sanibel Causeway. And in those years, it went from 0 to 100 so fast, like a few windsurfers. And then the next, in 6 months, it would double and then double again and then double again. And we had national competitions at the Sanibel Causeway. We were all racing one design stuff. And we would have 200 competitors there, not to mention the associated family and camper vans and parties and this and that. And for a high school kid, it was just like, it was a blast. I'm not much of a team sport guy, so that was my, I laughed because me and my best friend in high school, we went out for soccer and we were just dabbling with windsurfing at that time. And we could both kind of play soccer a little bit. And we were having fun. And all of a sudden one day, we realized how badly we wanted to go windsurfing, and we show up for soccer practice. And it's a rare occurrence that there's wind in Southwest Florida. The trees were shaking, and we looked at each other and we're like, that's it. Soccer's done. We're out of here. And that started probably, I would say, out of 2 to 3 years, we missed maybe, if one of us had to go on a family vacation or something like that, we would miss days. I would bet in 2 to 3 years, we missed no more than 20 days. 25 days of windsurfing. And in Southwest Florida, that's a lot of standing and almost no wind, but we would make the best of it, and practice pumping in no air and practice, play king of the board. We were riding these 12.6 Mistral super light one design boards, and we would just go and play. And we had a community of friends, and we had such a blast. And, our friends would come down, the girls would come down, and it was such a fun scene. So, as we kind of finished high school, a lot of friends kind of continued on that racing endeavor. They wanted to be one design racers, Olympic class, Division II, whatever. And we had gotten a little taste of high wind windsurfing, and we just went in a different direction. We decided. So my best friend was a year older. He got a trip to Hawaii for his high school graduation present. We were doing everything together. And at that time, and he told me, he's like, oh, I got a trip to Hawaii for my graduation present. And he looked at me and he goes, but you have to come too, right? And I'm a junior in high school. I'm like, well, yeah, love to, and we were both working at that time. So we had money. There was it's kind of a cool area that we grew up in Southwest Florida on Estero Island, because there was just jobs around and just tons of energy. And we had night jobs. We taught windsurfing on the weekends, and we put it together. And I was fortunate to accompany him on that trip to Hawaii, which was 1 month on Oahu and then 1 month on Maui. And it changed my life.
That was just that is so sweet.
Yeah. So I was 16 and did that trip with him, and we come to the end of the summertime, and I'm like, okay, well, time to go home, right? And he's like, well, actually, I'm going to stay. And he went on to go to community college there on Maui, and it left me in a pickle. Like, I could have easily stayed. I could have found some kind of work or whatever, but I realized I wasn't prepared. If I stayed, I would probably never finish high school. But it was a hard choice to make, and I decided, all right, let's go back to Florida. And I spent that year continuing to teach windsurfing on the weekends, and I was bussing tables at night. And then the one thing that I really wanted to do, by that time I'd already sort of developed a interest in sailmaking. My mom is a as a sewer. I've been around sewing machines my whole life. I'm very comfortable with that sort of thing. And I was really fascinated by, it goes back to a story like my uncle. The first time I ever went sailing was on a sunfish, and I was 11 or 12 years old. And my uncle said, "Hey, come on, we're going to go sailing." And I was like, "Great, let's go sailing." And we get to the little beach rental center, and he knows the guy, and we organize the thing. We drag the sunfish down there and put it in the water. And in my inexperienced mind, I thought you just get out on the water and you just get blown somewhere. I hadn't thought past that, like that's how it works. So we get out there, and immediately we start going into the wind. And I remember just being absolutely dumbfounded by what was happening, because we're surrounded by all this air that's moving that way, but we're going that way. How's this possible? So that was the initial thread that I pulled that grew into this fascination. And so that's what, spent time sailing with him. I ended up actually running that beach rental center at one point with Prindles and Hobie cats. Oh God, that's before insurance and everything. We would send people out, boats flipping, disappearing. It was just chaos, but that's the time, right? But it was so much fun. I knew that I wanted to be a sailmaker. So I in Southwest Florida, there was a big boat loft that was run by a guy who I actually, incidentally, I'm working with again, which is another wild story, but he, Brian Thompson, and I went to that big boat loft and I said, I want to come here 4 days a week. I'll work for free. All you got to do is sign this paper so that I could get my, hang on, let me see if I can silence my notifications here. Can you still hear me okay?
Oh yeah, sure, no worries. Yep, I'm good.
There we go. I said, will you sign this paper so I can get out of school early? And I'll sweep, I'll do whatever. And he took me on, and I'll be forever grateful for Brian doing that for me. And he taught me how to sew on the old Bernina 217, which is the machines that so many of us sailmakers and sail designers use. And he taught me how to do traditional floor layouts and string layouts and transfer to hard patterns, one-to-one hard patterns, how to cut, how to stick, how to sew, basic assemblies, all of these sort of things. So I spent my senior year basically volunteering at that loft. And then at the very end, I made 2 sails for myself and a quiver bag. And I had a plane ticket for Maui. And probably the day after graduation, I think I took off and ended up on Maui. And that was in 1989. Yep.
Oh, whoa. Okay. So do you think it was a good thing then that you got to stay back and learn a little bit before heading back out?
Absolutely, because it allowed me to show up on Maui with something to offer. I had already had a fair bit of experience in windsurfing, but I didn't have a skill other than teaching. And I wasn't really passionate about teaching, and that didn't really call to me. But I love sailmaking, and I love that kind of work because it's very tedious. It's very busy. You have to be very focused. It's not for everyone. I've tried to teach several different people how to do the work that I do, and they're bored instantly because it's, there's a lot of repetitive stuff. There's a lot of difficult things. It's not just like, the other extreme would be like your celebrity board shaper, right? They're just in there, just like mowing foam and creating this beautiful object, and ta-da, there it is. There's so much more delayed gratification in sailmaking. You've got to put the time in, you got to, just cutting all the panels takes time. I mean, we've since moved on to plotters and digitizing everything, but it's still quite tedious. It's to build a sail or a wing is, it's 12 man hours of work. And that's if your system is set up. That's if your machine's running right. If you're organized, you know what you want. But a lot of times you don't even know what's happening. Your assembly's going well, but you don't know until you rig that thing or until you inflate that thing, what actually happened through that process. And it's not so apparent if there's a mistake where it came in. So, the construction is really an important, it's like people think sails and wings are sort of like stamped out of a press, but they're so bloody labor intensive. And the tolerances, I'm on 0.25 of an mm for tolerances for main seams and things like that. Outline, things like that, you have a little more room to play with. But when you're dealing with profile seams and shaping seams, there's really no tolerance. It has to be correct. So, having spent that time learning under Brian Thompson and understanding the importance of precision, understanding a little bit of the skill set, basic stuff, man, like how to maintain your scissors, because it's so important. You have to know how to sharpen your scissors, and you have to know exactly where and how to keep them oiled and how your rulers are set up. And all of these tools require knowledge and experience to know how to run. And it's just pins, pens, and scissors, but really there's a lot more to it than that. You got to be super organized. So I'm very thankful that I went back and hooked up with Brian and got the basic skill set to at least open the door. And, arriving on Maui with that wasn't a guarantee either. It was really a busy time. There were a lot of people around. There was a lot of people hustling for work. Straight off the airplane, you could go work at a board shop. You could do ding repair. You could apprentice laminating or sanding or doing any one of those things. Again, those didn't really appeal to me. The loft jobs were very few and far between. So it took me a year to find my first job, actually. And in that year, I did a lot of surfing because I had to work in the daytime, which was great.
Yeah.
It's like I was working 9 to 3:30. So that really kind of fit into my, windsurf possibility, of course, on the weekends. But I was digging ditches. I was doing landscaping. I started to do some construction work. I ended up on a framing crew. And that was actually really fun and interesting because it's kind of up my alley, that sort of thing, precise measurements, building things.
Oh,
but
true.
I knew that I wasn't going to be a builder for a living. And luckily, the guy who was teaching me was also a hardcore windsurfer. So when the day came that I showed up and said, "Hey, I got an offer to work at this loft. I'm on my way out," he was understanding and very supportive of me. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it took a year and finally just word of mouth. A friend of mine, we were down in Paia one day and he yells across the street he's in front of Mana Foods. I'm across at Hairbenders and he goes, "Hey, I heard Ezzy's looking for somebody." And I just dropped everything and went, "Oh, okay, right." I went straight up the haiku to my house, pulled out the phone book, of course, looked up David Ezzy, like this. There's his number, called him immediately and said, I'd love to come and talk to you. Are you looking for somebody? Yeah, I'd love to come and talk to you. And I said, well, I'd love to come right now. He says, okay, well, here's my address. Turns out he's on the other end of this loop street that I'm living on in Haiku, just by chance. I didn't even know he was there. So I was able to walk from my house to his design loft on Mopua Place, and we pretty much hit it off. I think I was exactly what he was looking for: young and keen and impressionable, and that was exactly what I was looking for. Was just a fast track right into the heart of the industry and the trade as well. So. We had a couple get to know yous, and within few weeks, I was pretty much full time working for him. And, within 6 months, I was overseas, and he was designing for North Sails at that time. And I was in Sri Lanka within 6 months, which was my first time out of the country. We were there for 7 weeks or something like that. I almost died of a staph infection and culture shock. And it was just like, this crazy thing. But it was wild because it was straight into the North Sails factory, which was it 8:16? It was 2 shifts. And we would work both shifts because we had to teach and introduce patterns to everybody. And I don't know how many workers there were, 400, something like that. They were doing 35,000 sales, something like that.
Whoa.
It was nice. So straight into the frying pan. Yeah.
Right into the head.
And I worked with I worked for and with David for almost 10 years, like 9 years or so.
Beautiful. So that gave you a heck of a
Yeah,
good intro into the industry.
definitely. Yeah, that was fantastic. And probably the best part about that, I mean, he was a taskmaster and he was not easy to work for, but his work ethic was like, I mean, for me, it would be unsustainable what that guy was doing at that time. He was up at 3:30 in the morning, um, laying out patterns. I would show up at 6:30. We would build a sale every day, 5 days a week. And that's the only exception is when we were in Sri Lanka, which we went twice a year for weeks at a time. And so
Okay.
not only building that many sales by hand, I probably hand built 3,000 sales or something like that. The At 2 o'clock we went and tested. So we would rig it, check it, and then straight to the beach. And oftentimes from the haiku loft, his haiku loft is like 7 minutes to Hokipa. Test there, and as the sun got low, we would race down to Kanaha and test whatever free ride sales or even wave sales. As Hokipa, the wind started to drop, we would just head down the coast and test until dark. And then we would test on the weekends too. It was exhausting. It was just like, it was nonstop, but I took on a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge in that time.
Oh yeah, big time. Holy
Yeah.
man, what an intro into the wind sports. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened after working for Ezzy? Where'd you go from there?
So from there, I was actually pretty physically destroyed at the end of that time. And I mean, it's hard to overstate how rigorous that schedule was. And all at once, I left that job. I left the marriage, moved houses. I just did this major reset in my life. I realized I needed a break. Flew to the mainland, hooked up with a buddy in Vail, Colorado, searched for a couple weeks, found a beautiful old Ford pickup truck with a camper shell on it. And I just tripped around on the mainland for, I don't know, 3 months or something like that. I drove from Maine to Florida to Colorado, California, everywhere except the Northwest, actually, and just mountain biked my brains out and connected with family and friends and did a major reset and just enjoyed that time. Before I left for that trip, and the word sort of had gotten out that I had left my employment with Ezzy there, I spoke to a few different people in the industry about the potential of working together. And I had a fantastic conversation with Klaus Simmer, and he came to me, or I can't even remember very organic. I mean, Maui's a tiny place. We just see everybody all the time. And he was curious about what I was up to. And so we had a great conversation. And while I was on the mainland, it really gave me a lot to think about. And, in the end, I ended up coming back to Maui. I had signed a no compete clause with Ezzy that was, since having it reviewed by lawyers and stuff, was completely outlandish and probably unenforceable. But I wasn't, and it was like a 2-year period where I wasn't supposed to do anything for anyone. But it was, but I wasn't in a rush to do anything either. I didn't want to jump into another major relationship. So I came back to Maui and I just sort of started to hang around at the Simmerloft and talking to Klaus and developing a relationship with him, maybe just kind of casually advising on what I saw with what was going on with their sales. And I started to do a sale repair business, which at that time was one of my best friends on Maui and I actually did it together. And that was right in Paia. We would take in, too many sales, more than we could manage, 8 to 12 to 50, sales a day. And that's how I paid my rent for a long time. And it also was, working with Ezzy was very insular. There was there was somewhat limited interaction with other brands, with other products. It was very much just what we were doing. So the process of running through, I mean, there I can think of the top 3 repairs that I did over and over again that paid my rent and my food bill. And it was such a great education and how to do things and how maybe also not to do things. I learned so much. So, and then, we're getting into a year into that 2-year no compete. And then I just sort of realized that I was not really beholden to anyone about where I could work and when I could work. And I just slid in and just started kind of one model at a time, designing the simmer stuff, getting overseas and organizing production and just kind of let that relationship grow. So that was simmer and my first chance to do an original design on the market. And we did pretty well in those years. They went from maybe it's a very boutique brand compared to the bigger brands. And, I think we quadrupled the number of sales we were selling, went from 2,000 to 2, 4, 6, 7,000, maybe 8,000 sales by the time I left, which is
good for you guys.
Pretty good number. And in that time, achievable number for this is still before kiting was just starting right about then, just as I was sort of, into my last 2 years with Simmer. And being a more boutique brand, it allowed, we weren't there. All we could do was grow, really. So it was a perfect setup for me to introduce my ideas, my concepts, bring some people on who identified with what I was doing and what I was looking for in the sales. It was, I had the opportunity to write a lot of the marketing materials for Simmer, which was a great thing for me to be able to, push what we were doing on Maui at that time. And Simmer had, the ownership of that brand has changed. And around, not long after that, it changed. And there was a lot of energy kind of going away from Maui. And that to me, that was just a tragedy, because that was the heart and soul of that brand and what people really identified with. And what I identified with when I was in high school and opening windsurf magazines, and you see Malta Simmer just hitting the lip on a 10-foot wave. It's like, that's it. Blue water, trunks, Simmer, the stuff doesn't break. Yeah. Like, this is the heart and soul of this brand. And there was kind of a feeling in the industry that, oh, don't be so Maui centric. You have to travel the world to understand what the world needs. And there's element of truth to that, but you can't cut yourself off at the knees, like the foundation of your brand either. So being able to write those marketing materials was a great opportunity for me to shine a light on what I was doing personally and what we were doing as a team as well. I was working with Kai Kachadorian, who's still a Simmer rider, and working with Anders Bringdahl as well.
He's a ripper.
Yeah, those were just such fun times. He was just a great guy to work with, and such a talented windsurfer. And Charger too. Oh my gosh. And Robbie Seeger was on the sales then. Oh, yeah. And how many more? Yeah, it was great. And we were able to really kind of reinforce the heritage, the Maui heritage of that brand. It was a great project. And I was working for Klaus initially, and then Thomas Pearson had as a Swedish dude, he's actually to this day has the license. I think he bought the hardware portion of the company, and he was an awesome dude to work for. We had so much fun working in China together, and we're younger, we're partying, we're like building sales and traveling to different places, and it was a hoot for sure. So I think it was a Simmer. It was 7-8 years or so that I worked for Simmer.
7-8 years. Okay, yeah. What years was that?
Was that 2000, 89, 2000 to 2000. Yeah, it was almost 9 years. 2009, roughly.
Okay, because I rode some of those Simmers.
You did?
Yeah, I rode some of those, man. I love them. Yeah. They were so cool. I think I was just so stoked. The first trip to Maui, I picked up two used masts, so they're both simmer masts, and I also picked up a couple of used simmer sails back in 2012.
Awesome.
And so that was a pretty sick intro into windsurfing for sure. A lot of heritage and history there, which was awesome.
For sure. And I still see Malta around, and his son is a fantastic winger as well, Justin Simmer, around Maui there. And it's really fun to see those guys and have this history and have been part of history of that company, and still, still communicating and enjoying what we do on Maui. It's pretty fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. How did that transition then go from simmer into who you're working with now?
That was where I am now is my intro is so Goya windsurfing. Where do we start here? Francisco Goya and Lalo Goya are brothers, right? And they moved to Maui. Francisco moved to Maui about the same time I did in '89, and straight from Argentina. And his English was minimal, but he was a stoked and talented windsurfer. And I was so wrapped up in my Ezzy world, and he was wrapped up in his competitive world. It became apparent that he was, I'm a decent windsurfer, and I'm a decent rider, but there are those guys that are just on the top level. It's just the cream. And it was very apparent that he was one of those guys. So we didn't spend a lot of time together in the early years because he was very dedicated to his path of competitive windsurfing, and I was very dedicated to my path of windsurfing as much as possible and building sails. So we kind of grew up in a way alongside of each other. And then some years in, his younger brother came from Argentina, Lalo Goya, and Lalo was like 14 when he arrived or something like this. And again, Lalo is just like this. He's known as the owner of these companies, but I don't know if there's many better barrel riders on Maui, better surfers. He's so understated about what his ability is. He's a wicked skater, like just this full-on legit athlete, and happens to be running these companies, So these two guys, and then they have a third brother. There's another brother, Alejandro, as well, who is around town. But we kind of all were at the beach together, but all on different projects and things like that. And then the second half of my simmer time, we combined our workshops. I moved my design loft out of Paia up to Haiku, in with those guys who were establishing the Quattro board factory up in the Pauwela Cannery, and took over this 2,000 square foot space, and we're trying to figure out how to pay the rent, and offered me a section. I'm like, yeah, perfect. And so that was the initial board shop in Haiku in the Pauwela Cannery, was Quattro and then the Simmer Design Center, which I had signed out and everything like that. 2 machines, I was doing repairs, doing everything. So we worked next to each other for a while. And, the simmer thing was fantastic, but there was a point where I realized that I didn't own it. I only had so much influence about what was going on. There were, if I'm honest, there were just kind of like some decisions that were being made that were surprises to me, which is fine. It's not my company, but at some point I just kind of went, I think maybe my time is about done here. And I would speak to Lalo and Francisco, and Francisco was had started to do some sales on his own, working with different sail makers on Maui and designers, and just kind of like a little bit here and there. And I was just like, you guys, I think it's inevitable that we've got to work together here, and we all agreed. But we started that conversation when I was really in full swing with Simmer, and I said, let's just keep this in mind. Let's let this develop for a year or two and see, because I was, as I said, I'm designing for a company that's selling internationally. I'm in the marketing materials. I'm going to production. There's just a lot going on to just start from square one. but these guys were determined to build something. And so basically it comes down to a number, right? It's like, I'd love to work with you guys, but this is what I need to make it happen. And we had that conversation, and I think it was that evening, Lalo called me back and he said, let's do it. And that was it. It was game on from there on. So I finished my time with Simmer, finished my productions, everything like that. It was as about as well as you can end a relationship, I think, because I don't think there was any hard feelings or anything like that. It was just obvious we all had to go on to the next thing. And for me, the idea of working with Lalo and Francisco and Keith Tabul, who is the third owner of these brands, Keith was like my best friend on Maui. We moved there again. He moved there about the same time, and we surfed all the time together. We would drive out to Hana and surf. We would surf Hokipa. We just did everything together, chase girls, whatever, you know. And when it kind of came to pass that I was going to come and work for these guys, for me it was like, this is it. I've arrived. I'm not trying to, and that's how I feel to this day. I'm not interested, and I don't have any ownership in these companies. I just don't. It's not interesting to me to take on that sort of responsibility. I have too many other things going on in my life. But this, for me, I feel like I have arrived. This is what I've been working towards, is this collaboration with these guys. We have a lot of history. We have a deep respect for each other. And we've had families next to each other. We've traveled a lot together. We're really close. And it's dangerous waters for a business relationship, I know, because I've seen it go wrong so many times, but we keep our communication super clean, and our deal is square. They don't owe me anything. I don't owe them anything. It could end tomorrow and it's all good. It's not ending tomorrow, I can promise that. But it's just
no,
like,
please, no.
It's like, this is what we've been working towards, because it really is about relationships and community, and especially for us and our target and what we're trying to do. We're trying to create the stuff that we love to ride, and we want to share it with people, and we want to interact with people, and we want to work with our riders. We want to work with our customers and have an open communication about what, because the sports are changing so fast. I mean, winging, obviously, it's like hyper speed. You have to be receptive to what your riders and your customers are experiencing. And the same thing is happening with windsurfing too. I mean, it's been so fun to be part of this industry in the last years, because it's evolved. From windsurfing, it was like, oh, here comes kiting. Windsurfing's been canceled. Okay, it did take our volume way down, but we learned to coexist. And I have to thank kiting for forcing us to create gear that works in those conditions that other guys were saying, oh, you can only kite in this. We're windsurfing in conditions that your kite falls out of the sky. We're windsurfing in lighter conditions than kiters can go in at this point, depending, if it's gusty or whatever and your kite's falling. So it really,
and skill.
And skill. It really, actually, I would say drove the development of board design more than anything, that we can ride these giant boards that turn. I took a brand new board out to the coast, 91 liters. There's no wind. I'm standing there. My ankles are dry, and the board just rips. You can turn it as hard as you want to. There's no limit. Whereas in the old days, we just rode longer and longer and longer boards, and they got harder and harder to turn as they got bigger. And now there's no loss of maneuverability, and that's due to the pressure of improving the gear because of kiting, because of any other sport that comes along. I love it. It's just a healthy environment to push everything along and progress things and make it fun, make it more fun. Windsurfing after 15, 20 years and the boards were kind of the same, it had a little bit of a feeling like we're just kind of sharpening the same sword over and over again. And then kiting just threw a bomb in the middle of all of that. And what came out of the other side are these boards that are so much more fun to ride. And because the boards are buoyant, because they're loose, it just blows open all these doors for sail design too, making the sails lighter, more reactive, not to mention that the technique and material development is coming along. We're riding masts that weigh nothing and they don't break. We're riding booms that are just so minimalist and they don't break. It's just, it's so fun. It's so fun. And now, with winging, same thing. It's like this alternative that in my mind really complements windsurfing. And it's just bringing more people into this arena of wind and water sports. I think it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, it captures a whole group of people who don't want to kite because they feel it's too dangerous. They don't want to windsurf for I don't know why they wouldn't want to windsurf, but anyways, they choose not to. And then it opens up this window for winging, which is a completely different feeling, completely different sport. Like, how did you come up with your first concept of your first wing? Where did you borrow from, or where did you feel would be where you would start?
Well, it was for me, I never got into kite design, so that technology was foreign to me. Soft materials, bladders, like, what is this? A bladder? Trying to understand how those things all came together, and the pressures and the loads and all of these things. And honestly, it was a little overwhelming at first. It, partially because I drugged my feet in the beginning, because I've got 3 kids. I love to windsurf. I love to surf. I like to fish. I like to play golf. I like to mountain bike. There's only so much time in the day. And Lalo called me one day. He's like,
there is,
dude, I think we got to do wings. And I was like, oh, really? Come on. He's like, yeah, we got to do wings.
It's not going to last, man. It's going
to, I said, man, I'm not your guy. Can you find someone else? And he's like, okay. And then a month or 2 later, he calls and he's like, Jason. I said, yes, I knew what was coming. He goes, I need you to do these wings. And this is the relationship we have, is if he calls me out in that regard, I'll drop everything for these guys. I'll do it. I said, okay, all right. You want it? We'll do it. I started with the factory who produces our windsurfing sails was also doing kites and wings. I said, do you have any stock wings you can send me? And they said, sure. They sent me a couple wings. Of course, I did. So I get them here and I'm like, well, I guess I got to learn how to wing. And, flying the wing takes 10 minutes to figure out, right? It's really easy compared to flying a foil. And so I spent time on those wings and spent time on the SUP board, just figuring out how to go back and forth. And, by the second session, I'm like, well, this wing is not good. It has to change. And again, it was just following that thread of, okay, this leading edge is too small. This canopy is too soft. This thing is too heavy, and you just start unraveling it. But I had to start from square one on the design and figure out how to design and how to draw the things, what the different parts were, the different seaming methods, all of that. So getting those wings from the factory, doing modifications. And at the same time, I rode every wing I could get my hands on. I purchased a lot of wings too. I just had a look of what was going on around in the industry for sure. And it was, the thing about a wing is it's so forgiving. And especially in those early days, that if you saw the meme of Robbie on the kite foil board or the wing foil board with the umbrella, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there's a meme of him.
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
It really, typifies the experience. It's like, it almost doesn't matter what you have in your hand. So there's far more pressure on the foil, the board, and you as the rider. The wing is almost incidental in the beginning, anything will get you going. So sliding in at that moment and just like, okay, you don't have to freak out that it's not the perfect wing or this or that. Just get out there, just ride it, see what it feels like, and this and that. and riding a lot of different wings and seeing how the other designers were approaching the problems was a big part of how I was able to kind of get some traction in the design. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
1 second.
Yeah, because your V1, yep. Yeah, your V1 wing came out very good, I gotta say. Like compared to a lot of other brands, like we loved your long handles. We liked the way it rode. It pumped well. It flew well. It was a tinge heavier than others, but it didn't seem to matter very much, to be honest. Yeah. Because those long handles were they were great. And I was actually talking, his name escapes me right now. But anyways, he was in the gorge and he was selling for you guys for a little while.
To Andrew.
Andrew was saying that those long handles, he loved them for the length of time that they were around because you could stink bug and you can get going fast. So we were waiting to see when you would launch them, but it was cool that you waited because you got to look at some other things and then you came in, you're like, oh wow, so they're right there, which is awesome. So that was kind of a cool little thing that happened.
Yeah. That was what really helped me. And it was a big kind of milestone for me as I was shaping these things and creating the profiles, that all felt very familiar to me. And it was when I really started to identify with what I was building, when I could, the profiles that I drew into those wings are almost unchanged from then until now. Maybe a little more, a little bit less, but it's really, there's far more in common with a windsurfing sail with the wing than I would have thought in the beginning. So being able to relate those two and to be able to draw on some of that experience that I have in shaping windsurfing sails really helped a lot.
Okay. Because in windsurfing sails, like you have so many, like you have all these different panels, you got different forces acting, and now all of this stuff works together to distribute load and force and propulsion. Same thing kind of in winging with the canopy and how it interacts with the leading edge and the center strut and all that kind of thing.
It's so similar, I mean, you can compare a mast to a leading edge. You can affect the performance of the wing a lot by how much pressure you put in that leading edge, and you can affect the performance of a sail a lot by the stiffness of the mast you put in there. And also the bend curve, and that's the LE has a bend curve as well. As you control the diameters, you change the flex, and then as it relates to the boom and that connection between the LE and the strut, or like the boom on a windsurfing sail, and you want a really solid connection there, and you have to be careful of your boom length or your strut length, and same thing with a windsurfing sail. It's really just like a free handheld sail, which is kind of what a windsurfing sail is, except for the universal joint, obviously. They're very relatable.
So you've accepted it.
I've accepted it as being similar. Accepted winging.
No, as it's going to stick around for a while.
Oh yeah, I have to say that it was, if I'm completely honest, it was work in the beginning. I use a lot of self-discipline, and especially learning to fly that damn foil. Oh my gosh, kiters who are foilers, like, to me, a kite with a foil is one of the coolest crafts on the ocean, or on the water, I mean to say, because of the uplift, because of the angles, because you're up in that clean air. So those, watching those guys made me interested in, and, with the wing, it's a little bit different, but that learning process with the foil was it was horrifying. I bled, my stuff's flipping over. I didn't know how to carry it. It's just so kooky, you're just like this big, cool toy cupcake of a wing flying around, and then you've got this death machine like under your arm, and you're trying to keep them away from each other.
Oh yeah.
Getting hit and all of that. So I had to, I just said, okay, I'm going to go 10 times for an hour each time. I don't care how bad it goes. I'm going to just do this, and luckily, in the gorge here, you can get conditions pretty consistently. So getting over that hump, learning how to jibe was like the first real milestone for me being comfortable on the gear. Because by the time you're learning to jibe, you've also learned how to fall. You've kind of understand when things start to come apart, what might happen. So it's a little less scary. You've learned to not let go of your wing ever. You've learned, just you just get more comfortable with it. So jibing was a big one. And that was all in the time of trying so many different wings too. And, the jibe was this kind of this holy grail of like, okay, if I could just do that. And that's the time I was using the F1 wings, the Strike, and those wings
good to learn
just
on.
the best wing to learn on.
Yep.
Oh my God, they're incredible. Those guys
right. Shout out F1.
Yeah, shout out F1. You guys knocked it out of the park on that one. It was it helped me, like I'm trying to like, my feet feel like they're glued to the board and I'm trying to get around and the wing is just sitting there, smiling at me, waiting for me, and you just grab it and away you go, It was awesome to ride that. And so many of the others too worked really well. So getting over that fear of the foil, getting comfortable with managing it, how to pack it in your car, how to transport it, all of these things I'm finally over. And it's all kind of leading to the essence of this, which, to me, what's the coolest sport on the planet? It's surfing. Everything else is kind of like you're snowboarding and it's like you're surfing, and you're skiing and it's like you're surfing, and it's like you're surfing, you're skateboarding, it's like you're surfing. But when you're on a foil in the river and you're riding knee-high swells and cutting back and reconnecting, and it is the most like surfing of almost anything I've done that wasn't actually surfing. So all of, the wing, the paddle, all of this is just trying to capture that feeling of riding that swell energy. And for me, it's super fun. I'm having a blast with it.
Oh yeah. And you're living in one of the best places in the world. Like at AWSI, I was out there testing. I think your gear and Muna White was not that far away. We're both riding these like shoulder high, whatever sets at event site. And it was first time me riding there in actual nice sizable stuff with a 3 meter, I think it was. And obviously the current helped because I had a lot more lift than normal, but it was such a beautiful place and just so many people around. Because we're used to sailing where my brother and I go on Vancouver Island, where sometimes we'll have 4 or 5 people. Other lakes you'll have 100. Some of them you're nobody. So it's so cool to see everybody there having fun. And
the setup here it's insane. It's fantastic for windsurfing. It's okay for kiting. I think you've got, that sandbar got barfed into the river however many years ago, 8-9 years ago, which created this like play park for kiting. But its access is tough for kiting, getting in and out of the water. But just the openness of the playing field, how portable a wing and foil is, and how much swell energy is available on the river, it's phenomenal. It's like I'm seeing the gorge offering more opportunity than I ever could have imagined at this point. Just seeing how many people it can accommodate as well. There's space for everybody. I'm not a grumbler. I don't give a crap how many people are out. If it's too crowded, to me, it's fun. You find guys to ride with, you go up, you go down, you share time and experience. And there's so much space on this river, and, parking's getting a little tight around here, but you just got to get on it early. You just you plan for it. You can't just show up on Saturday at 11 o'clock and think you're going to park somewhere. It just doesn't happen. So you got to get ahead of it. And again, back to the gorge, it's just like, it's phenomenal, for subfoiling, because the wind and the current are generally opposing here. It just creates so many opportunities.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm stoked to go back next year and spend a bit more time there. Maybe go for a month or so and just hit some different locations. And now that Wingan's come along, at least you got 2 sports to pick from. So
heck yeah.
But I want to circle back a little bit to your wings. How did you decide how big to go on that leading edge? And how did you decide stiffness and all that kind of thing for your V1 and even your V2?
So I did my early kind of exploration into the design and learning how to wing myself here on the gorge, and then jumped to Maui for my winter spring and connected with Casey Hauser, who's a good friend of mine, and I've known him for many, many years. And he joined our team riding the sails. He's a windsurfer, he's a kiter, he's just a gnarly athlete too. And I really, at some point after gathering knowledge for a period of time, which was months, a year or more, I stopped listening to everything around me and focused in on what I wanted to do. And Casey was my partner in that. He was the guy I bounced ideas off of. He was the guy that I tested with. He's the guy who I would send wings to test with. And we actually, we didn't design a wing with the world in mind. We designed a wing with an idea in mind, which was maximum power, super punchy, very stable, and very controllable, easy to handle. And because we're testing mostly off the north shore of Maui, out of the spots there, out of Kuau, out of Kanaha, places like that, riding in waves where we wanted to get punched out of the water quickly and juiced up fast and have a lot of stability when overpowered, because on Maui you get overpowered a lot. And you've got westerly swells coming in and offshore winds, and you get this big compression and things just start loading up. So that was sort of the design goal. And, it's sort of the opposite of what I described with the F1 type wing, which is very, very approachable, very soft, very easy to handle. And we kind of went the other way. And that's what was working for us in those conditions. And Casey really pushed for having that handle connect all the way to the leading edge. And we did the first prototype, and just to try it, and I never made another one different after that. It looks funny because it was super tight. It wrapped the front. People are like, "Oh, it rubs my knuckles." Oh. But the thing is when you're hanging on and you're loaded, the handle pulls away, and you just have all of this range. And when you're starting, it's easy to get under and grab it to get the thing over your head and go. So having that accessibility to that front handle is really good, especially if you're in the surf, you're on a sinker board, you're just doing everything you can to just get the thing over your head and get going. So that was really a big part of that handle configuration, was just making it easy to get going and having a lot of adjustment and range. And also we liked how that narrow, soft handle, you could hook your fingers and you just wouldn't get tired. You wouldn't get arm pump. You wouldn't get that sort of feeling.
Yep.
So for that time and that wing, that the soft handle is definitely not dead. At this moment, we're only doing hard handles, but I still play around with soft handle ideas, and probably will come with something like that again. So that was where that wing came from, was really learning what I did about the constructions and how they behaved and performed, and getting this size range of wings and getting the diameters right through the whole size range and getting a similar feel through the size range. And then that was it. That was the version 1 wing right there.
Okay. No, fair enough. And then how do you decide, let's say, canopy material, like how many ripstop to go? There's a lot of new material coming out now. Is that something that you're thinking about incorporating? I tried some of them ones at AWSI. It's hit and miss. Some are non-stretch, they're going eco-friendly, but some of them I didn't perform as well. So I was just curious on your thoughts. Yeah.
Well, all ideas are on the table always, for sure. I've got a lot of different sample materials, and I've got sample wings and new ones coming as well with different LE, different canopy. And the thing with materials, it's like there's no better or worse. They just do certain things. So it's a matter of getting the best out of each part that you want, so like our first wings were just super simple single panel wings. They didn't have radials, they didn't have anything. It was just a very simple design, which was kind of where I was at in my design ability at that point, actually, is making sure I could get a really clean shape, get the trailing edge tension that I wanted, and nothing extra, just very simple, keep it light, and no windows as well. We were just like, we're in the surf, just look if you needed this and that. I'll never make another wing without a window at this point. We need those for sure, especially with the number of people that are out there. So, ripstop is fantastic. It gives a breathability, a softness to the wing. combine, just like I do in the windsurfing sails. You can't build a sail completely out of hard materials. You lose that softness, that forgiveness. You lose that. Sometimes you want a little bit of stretch. You don't want stretch that just continues. You want stretch that comes back. So that bit of stretch gives you that softer clutch feeling. It allows you to power and depower more easily. And, just combining those different types of materials that have different stretch characteristics in the right way is the puzzle. That's the puzzle of the design.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now with hard handles, how did you find that transition from incorporating that, A, that they can't rip off, B, you guys are using 2 bolts, I think some brands are using 1, like all that kind of thing. How'd that kind of work in?
So the hard handle we have is not uncommon on the market. It's an OEM hard handle that our factory was able to get a hold of, which we like a lot, actually. It's super stiff and it's a little heavy. It's 4 bolts per handle, which is a little excessive, I think. We've got a new handle system that we're just finishing testing now that'll come in our next production. That's single bolt, more contoured, just a nicer hand feel for sure. And for me, other than the little bit of arm pump that you can get from a hard handle, it's just so much better. Just to be able to pitch control your wing and to be able to push it. The soft handle has some comfortable characteristics, but for overall control of the wing, it's hard to beat a hard handle. It's just so direct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then, so how are you making sure that those puppies aren't flying off like the original, like some of the first version wings they would, because now you could use a lot of different sewing characteristics to keep the soft handle on, but your hard handle seems to be more around a focal point, right?
Yeah, I mean, our soft handles were banded. Basically, you'd run a band around and then attach to the band, and it was really well supported in that regard. But we haven't had a hard handle pull off yet. You just add the layers that you need, distribute the load. It's fine. It's not a big issue.
Okay. No, fair enough. So what's coming? Can you share a little bit about what's coming for 2024? I think I saw a KT. It was a prototype, but I didn't get to ride it with windows and stuff at AWSI.
Yeah.
But I missed out on that one.
We can't. What's that?
I said I missed out on riding it.
Yeah, come back. I've got one right here.
Okay.
So I don't want to give up. Okay, so if you think about the version 1 wing that we put out, then we did the hard handle version wing, which still maintained a lot of that power and actually had a bit better control. I can't imagine the wing getting more powerful. So where can we improve? Okay. Which would be to a little bit more usability, a little bit more of a soft clutch, maybe not such a complete tractor pull feeling in that low end. It's trying to make the wing, particularly in maneuvers like tacks and things like that, where you're trying to get the thing over your head and to go. The version 1 wing would kind of hang back a little bit because it's, the canopy was soft, big leading edge, tons of power. It was harder to push that into the wind, where the newer wings have more of that natural flight. They're more lift. They kind of draw you through that maneuver as you're trying to tack and do upwind maneuvers and things like that. Incorporating windows for safety more than anything, just there are so many people, and I've been surprised, as we all have been, that, we're silent out there. And suddenly there's people right below you and you didn't even realize it, because of the angles that we take on these foils, like as wide-eyed. Well. Yeah. I like my riding style is I love to go straight upwind and I like to go straight off the wind. Back and forth is not my favorite, I'll do it, but to me, the joy is in that mobility and to cover great distances, and especially here in the gorge, you ride upwind for 30 minutes and then you're just downwind swell riding, all the way home. And, that's, for me, that's like, I'm a wind guy and I love that that mobility that the wing gives you. And, there's guys that are doing like shuttle runs and this, and then that's all great. And, the subfoil thing is quite interesting and the guys are killing it. And it must be nice to ride like that with no wing in your hand. But I like to be self-sufficient. I'm not trying to connect with people every time I go to the water. I want to launch. I want to ride upwind for an hour and then just play all the way down and work on my wing handling and work on managing that plus staying in the swell pocket. It's a very fun puzzle for me. I love that independence that the wing gives you and that mobility. So with that mobility and all these crazy angles, and there's other people riding in a similar style, we got to have windows. We got to be able to see who's below us.
Okay,
and
so
who's
that's
coming.
That's one change then. And the other thing that I noticed that differs per brand is how much upwind can you point the wing without it backwinding or smacking you.
Yeah.
Like some brands, I find you can't take them as much into that window. And then that's one of the first things I test on a new wing when I'm taking them out is how much can I flirt with that upper line? And because obviously I'm looking to go upwind as much as I can. And if it's going to start smacking me or backwinding a little bit, then it's like, it tells me a little bit about the design. Now, I don't know why it does, and maybe we could quickly talk about that because I don't know why it does that, but that's something I've noticed.
For me, in windsurfing, you have to work so hard to gain real estate, right? When you launch on a windsurfer, for me and any other, decent sailor, the first thing you're thinking is get upwind, put some money in the bank, get upwind. That's part of the racing heritage. You got to learn how to go upwind. So I never really thought about, as you say, you test wings and you check that limitation on your upwind angles. For me, I go straight to it. When I launch, it's the first thing I do is I hook in and I jam it upwind. And if I start getting pressure on my front hand or something like that, I change the wing. I change the profile. It could be something with the trailing edge is not as too tight or not tight enough, or just the general tension of the canopy. I don't think I can answer your question about what contributes to that or what creates that upwind ability. It's a combination of things for sure. And there's no real perfect solution. It's just working with the materials you've chosen and the profiles that you've got. And then you just kind of work on making it fit into those angles, So generally a wing that'll go upwind well will generally be a flat wing because there's less drag. But you have to be careful that the draft is forward as well, because that will also draw you upwind, but you will suffer across and downwind if you go too far in that direction. Because going downwind, you need a bubble. Upwind, you need a knife, So it's finding the blend between those two things.
Hey, thanks for sharing all of this with us and kind of helping us get to know you a little bit more. I didn't get much of a chance to talk to you in Hood, but pretty cool. How did you like AWSI overall? Was it pretty successful for your team?
It was fantastic, actually. And trade shows for me, it's like I sort of dread them. When the calendar starts getting closer, and our team's organizing, and it's like AWSI time. It's like, oh, really? Because you've got setup. It's a lot. It's like a lot of work, and
it is.
The event site here in Hood River, which I've done a fair number of trade shows over the years for windsurfing. It's like the worst place to ever do a windsurf demo. I can't think of a worse place on this planet to do a windsurf demo than the event site, because you've got that sandbar sticking out. There's a big pressure bubble right there. The wind sucks. It's like, if you don't know that spot, if you don't know that the first thing you do when you hit the water is get your butt upwind, if you don't know that, you're just going to have a terrible time because you're just stuck out in front. There's not enough wind. The water's getting shallow. Next thing you know, you're up on the sandbar, dragging your stuff back. And it's like, yeah, how was your demo? Well, it sucked. So it's like with the evolution of the AWSI, initially, our first AWSI was pre-COVID. It was kind of a windsurf event, and there was some SUP, and And it was just like, oh gosh, I was grateful to exhibit, and I was grateful to connect with people in the industry and riders and things like that. We are a pretty small community, and it is nice
tiny.
to all get in one place. We are competitors, but we are part of a singular organism in a way, so it's nice to touch base with old colleagues and friends and look at ideas and see who's sharing what. And it's very motivating too. But because of foil and wing in particular, AWSI just had this new energy. And last year you could feel it. And then this year it was like, it was so cool. There was so much new gear, so much enthusiasm. We had killer conditions. I mean, it couldn't have been better. It went from windy to lighter to lighter to lighter, which is perfect because then you can exhibit your full range of gear and what's working. And we had like six guys. 6 of our team members came from Maui, and so we were well represented, and we had a lot of cool stuff to show. And it was great. It was a great event for sure.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, glad it worked out well. Is there anything else that A, you'd like to cover, and B, you would like people who are brand new to KT to learn a little bit more about you guys and why they should consider riding some gear that's designed and built in Maui?
I would say
are built there, but
what else could I share? I don't know. We could probably talk for hours. I love talking about this sort of thing.
Probably.
You pick a topic and I'll run on it. But as far as the brand goes, what I really appreciate about working with this team is the accessibility that we have. Like, if you come to Maui, come to our shop, you can demo anything we produce, anything we have in production, even a bunch of custom stuff free of charge. We want to service our riders. We want to work with people to make sure that they have a good experience. And if they don't, we want to work with them and hopefully create it. These sports are not for everyone. You've got to be an enthusiast a little bit. You got to be a little tough to be a windsurfer. You got to take a lot of crap, and you got to be You got to be persistent to figure out what foil parts you need, how they go together, where it goes on the board, and hang on. They're very service intensive products, and that's what we love to do. And we're developing. So we work with Big Winds here in Hood River. We've got a great crew down there that, if they don't have the answers, they'll reach out to me or one of our team members. And we want to just have a very human connection with the people and the riders that are on the gear. And we want them to feel part of this and also supported, because, that's what we do this for. This is what enables us to live this life, is to create gear that we all enjoy riding. So, I would recommend, if you have a chance, go to Maui, come to the shop, see what's going on. It's crazy. Keith's doing, he's probably doing 300 boards a year or something like that, between all the production stuff, Kai Lenny's probably getting 50 boards a year at this point, between SUP and surf and windsurf and foil boards. And, it's just nonstop. And then all the other riders. And it's just, the boys have expanded the factory, added machinery. It's growing, and this center of development is just hot right now. So it'd be fun if anybody wanted to come. And the doors are always open 9 to 2, 5 days a week up in Haiku. Actually, I think we're open Saturday too. And then Big Winds here, and we're developing our U.S. distribution right now as well. We've got some warehousing over. Yeah, we got warehousing over in Bingen, and we're organically growing. And Francisco got a big project going in Bingen with potential warehouse for that, but it might evolve. I don't know, but we're putting the pieces into place. We fully expect to be here in 10 years from now and doing what we're doing now. So we're gonna try our best to put the pieces in place to make that happen.
Oh, beautiful, man. I'm happy to hear that. How do you find working with how do you find working with Kai and some other of the riders that are on the team? How's that feel
fantastic.
like? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Every rider brings their strength and their communication style and I'm so fortunate to work with this group. And, Kai, we've been really down a wormhole on a new concept wave sail for him. And we spent a lot of time testing together last winter. And I'm about ready to go to production on what we've come up with together. And his needs are so specific. His vision is so specific. And it's fun to ride with a guy like him because he's approaching it in such a different way. When we trade gear at Hokipa on a wave day, his stuff feels like it came from another planet because he's riding like these super wide stances. His fins are like canted out like this. The board feels like it's almost underwater as it's rolling, but it's so fast and it's so stable. And he's trying to do these certain type of hook turns. He wants to have a sail that's neutral and powerful at the same time because he's trying to ride in the pocket, hit lips, fly. He wants to jump, all of these things. And so, I don't know how many prototypes we are in on this, many. It's been a lot of fun working with him. He's been riding on the sails for a while now, but I'd say in the last year, we've really started to, it takes time to get to know. I knew Kai from when he was a little kid, but you can be together on the island and be in different worlds at the same time. He was on his path, I was doing my thing. This is the first time we've really worked together, and it takes time to build that relationship, to understand what the other person's looking for, what you can expect from the other person, and just how much time it takes to get to certain goals. So I'm pretty stoked with what we've done. And also working with Marcilio Brown, who's our current world wave champion in windsurfing.
Yes, sir.
He's in Silt. They might
What
be
a
competing
rider
right now. Yeah. Working with him he's just the most humble, sweet, gnarly windsurfer. Like, he's just the best to work with. And we've done so many protos over the years together, and it's just a joy working with him. Guys like Levi, working a little bit, with Kai's brother Ridge as well, working with Otis Buckingham, who was just here for AWSI, and he was going off, he's doing full rotations and everything on the wing. But he's 16, and it's like, hey, Otis, how was the wing? He's like, oh, it's good. It's like, all right, cool. Let's, developing those skills of how to present feedback and how to better help me with what he's looking for, So I've got a great range of riders and athletes that I get to work with. I'm super stoked. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, that must be such a joy, and a range of dedications and skills and life experience, and even testing. Like, that must take, as a rider, must take a while to be able to differentiate between all those aspects as well, to bring you good, valuable advice, right? Like, that must take a little bit of time too, because not everybody's a good tester.
Not everyone gets there either. Some guys like Marcilio are he doesn't tell me what to do on the sails. He tells me what he's looking for and feeling. So I have to interpret that. Other riders will come in and say, put this here. And if I agree, or if I'm willing to try, I'll just put it there. Other riders are just more like in the clouds, and they love it or they don't, or they love everything. I've had riders that love everything. Everything I put in their hands, they're like, oh, this is amazing. I'm like, really? I kind of hated that sail actually, but it's just more about their personality, it's just, they're just happy and stoked, and they're not going to become critical. It's just not in their personality profile. And that's fine too, because the proof is in the pudding. I've got riders that are like that, and I can see, I've been watching these guys my whole life, and I can see when they're relaxed, when they're engaged, and when they're having fun. I can see it within seconds of watching them on the water. It's quite apparent.
Okay, so then you can take that back as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If the rider is ripping on the thing that I think I like, then it's all good. But if I see them struggling a little, I'll go back and retest. And for me, sails, wings, masts, anything like that, I test it first. I've got 20 sales being delivered today, full set for Kai, full set for Marsilio, set for Levi, I will at least rig all of those sales, if not try to get on them the key sizes before I send them to Maui within the next couple of days. These are sales for the upcoming contest, the Aloha Classic. And they, any new design I test myself, and that's going back to the roots of my process of learning, which was building a sale every day, testing at 2:00. I can step on a sale and in 15 seconds tell you if it's doing what I want it to or not. And it's really important for me. The feedback from the team either validates what I'm feeling or will raise questions that make me retest again and make sure I get it the way I want it, so that when they're testing, I know exactly what they're talking about. I have to ride this stuff before the team does, because then we can speak the same language when we're sharing feedback.
Okay, so thank you to your mentors and to your shot with Ezzy and building all that time and dedication in, right? And then it brought you to today, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Nothing but grateful for all of that experience. There were hard times, but here we are, still in the water, still doing it.
And I love the essence of what that KT brand stands for, because the first time I went to Hawaii, life stuff happened. I got into a serious near-death motorcycle accident, took 10 years to rehab. And then when I went, I met Sam Bittner at an event in Plattsburgh, and she says, hey, do you want to come help film PWA? And I said, sure, whatever, I can come. I just started windsurfing, so stoked. But when I walked into there, everybody just embraced me. It was crazy. You walk in, they say, hey, how's it going? Here, come check this out. Come meet this person. Come do this. And here's a board bag. And here's all the things. You're bringing this old gear back to Canada. And that's what sunk in for me. And that's why I started riding. I still have Power Wave sales from a while back. And that's what made that connection with me. And that's what a lot of people are looking for. Because it's why am I riding when I'm riding? I got so many options. So that's why it's awesome to be able to chat and get to know you guys more and get to see that whole lifetime of dedication that you've put towards something. Because us who have 4 or 5 hours or whatever, you have a weekend and you're it makes your experience more full, if you know what I mean. It's not like you're just driving an empty car. You get to drive something and you get to have that whole heritage with you. So that's pretty cool.
You're part of the story is what it boils down to, because that's why the doors are open for the shop. I'm glad you were well received. Sometimes things are hectic in there and people kind of get ignored.
It was fine.
But please don't, anybody who goes and you get sort of ignored, just hang in there. There might be a hot moment going on. You're not quite sure, but
I set a high bar.
Yeah. That's why the door is open, is for this opportunity to connect and interact with people, because we are all of us, myself, Lalo, Francisco, Keith, we really connect. We relish these interactions because it's what feeds this story for us. It's what guides us and drives us forward, for sure.
Well, nice, Jason. Well, hey, thanks for taking time out of your, busy day to chat with me today. And I'm stoked to see you for the next time and try out some of the new gear that you come out with.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to chat. This has been a blast. And yeah, we got a little wind today, so might have to get out on the water.
Nice. All right, cool. Hey, enjoy the gorge, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
All right, Luke, take care.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.